Hey everybody, welcome to the Wednesday Shorts Nutrition Series. Everybody hopefully had a great week. I am back this week with a good friend of mine. We got a lot to talk about. We got a little bit of time to do it, so I don't want to take too long to do an intro here. But I've got Peter Bilarczyk on with me today. You're about to meet him. And as you all know, last week I went through a protein sparing modified fast. And Peter was sort of helping guide me through the whole thing. And he's got a brand new website called The Fat Adapted Athlete. And I am going to bring him on now. Hello, Peter. How you doing today, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. How y'all doing?
I'm great.
New Jersey boys in the house, right?
Yes, Jersey boys in the house. I am. While we're talking, I'm going to let Peter introduce himself, and I'm going to get the show up here on my phone. So that
I had to put on my glasses so that we wouldn't look the same. We're doing the same goatee, the bald head. It's the Jersey look. So yeah, I'm Pete Bilarczyk. I run a website called Fat Adapted, FAAT, fatadapted.com. That stands for the Fat Adapted Athlete Training system that we've been putting together, and also run two groups over on Facebook, the Fat Adapted Athlete and the Fat Adapted Athlete Beginner, where people can go in there, get all the information that they want for free. But if you want me to coach you, that costs just a little bit extra.
As it should. As it should. Knowledge shouldn't be free. Knowledge should be earned. And if you're not willing to earn it on your own, you got to pay somebody to give it to you.
Well, I find out everybody kind of comes through these same processes. We all read the same things. We could all go to the library. We could pull books off the shelf. Librarians there for free. We could use them as much as we want. But if you want to tell somebody, those 5 books you just read? Yeah, You should have just been reading this one and not even the whole book, just these 2 pages, and it would have given you everything. The amount of time that we cut off because we're being very specific to the person, not just giving you general guidelines that are set out there for me. Like I basically teach ketogenic style dietings, but not the therapeutic things that they used to teach kids that had epilepsy or cancer patients. We teach ones for athletes. Athletes have a completely different set of needs, or else they're gonna hit some bad walls.
Athletes have an amazingly different set of needs from a standard off the couch going to the gym type person. A lot of people don't understand that. It's something we talk about on the Fit Show a lot, is the difference between a casual diet and an athletic diet, a sports need versus an everyday need. Well, I want to jump right into, so last week, y'all know, everybody kind of followed along as I went through the protein modified fast, and it was awesome. I lost some weight. I got cut. I saw my abs. It was great. So I want to get into the nuts and bolts of it so that people understand exactly what I did and why I did it. Now, for me, the why was kind of simple. Number one, I wanted to try it. Number two, I've been working out and I've been working so hard, and there's been that last couple of pounds I have been struggling to shave off, so I wanted to see if that was going to do it. But why don't you get more into the nuts and bolts of exactly what it is? And we've lost Peter. Oh, no. Uh-oh. All right, so while I'm trying to get Skype back up, it says we're on hold, so I don't know what that means. I'm going to hang up and try to call him again. Let's try to give him another call. So the basis of the diet, again, once I get Peter... Whoa, that's not fun in the ears.
Perfect timing. There we go.
Are you back? There you are.
Apologies.
Okay.
That beautiful alarm that I set to be on the show with you, that just crashed the whole system.
Oh, did it really?
So, yeah.
Nice.
So I did hear what you said. So the nuts and bolts, the reason why we're doing the protein sparing modified fast is, so just to understand the 2 sides of the macros, and it's blasphemy for me to talk this way because I teach how to be fat adapted, which means raising your fat up to a good, comfortable level,
right,
and dropping your carbohydrates down, because we don't always need carbohydrates. We can make those from other sources. But on one side of the fence, you have those, and that's your energy macros. If you don't use them, you're going to store them. Plain and simple. You don't use carbohydrates, your insulin shuttles it into fat cells. If you don't use the fat, you also store that. On the other side of the macros is your protein. The body has no storage mechanism for it. You have about an ever-replenishing 200-gram pool of amino acids. It's constantly, old ones are going out, new ones are coming in, they're being rebuilt, and we're constantly replenishing that through the blood, but we really don't store those. So for that reason, if we raise up the protein a lot, we protect the muscles. The muscles can really only take about 1 gram of protein per lean pound of body mass in a regular state. But when you're in a fasted state, it can use up to 2 or 3 grams of protein. So we raise that protein way up. Again, because it's not going to store, we're going to just pee it out. It turns to ammonia, so we want to be careful.
But explain that really quickly. So when you go into a fasted state, your body will double or triple its need for protein to keep the muscles protected.
Yeah, because the opposite can happen. In the first, let's say we go regular fasted. A lot of people are in my world, everything's about fasting. Guys like Dr. Jason Fung uses it for greatly obese patients because, without pun, there's a bigger elephant in the room. They will die if they don't lose the weight. So that's the most important thing. But what they don't realize is when they get to athletes that once you get into a fasted state after the first 24 hours, you'll start losing about 3/4 of a pound of muscle every day for the next 3 days until it kind of slopes down to about 1/4 pound of muscle. And the science is all through Finney and Volek. They proved this out, and they basically showed that's how it works. What we're doing is we're trying to fast to lose the fat but not lose the muscle. So by raising the protein up to an amount that we're definitely going to cover. And realistically, the studies I've read, you can go up to 3 grams and still be in a state where your muscles can use them in that fasted state.
Right.
But we're only going up to 1.5 grams to 2 grams tops, I think it was. If somebody's inactive and they do this, it's 1 gram to 1.5 grams. Somebody's active, it's 1.5 grams to 2 grams.
Yeah, I was, when I started, I was around 145-ish, 147. And I was taking in about 280 grams of protein a day for the entire month.
And for me, and this is the funny, a little bit behind the scenes. So John and I are hanging out on Messenger on Facebook, and he's like, starts asking me about this, and I was like, I've been wanting to do this. Like, it's been a while since I've done some sort of fast, so it was very easy to say, okay, well, how about we both start that and then, and how about we start then, and how about and we were like, you know what, the only time we had that we could sync up was let's do it tomorrow. Which, how great is it to not even think about, let's just write in and let's do it together, and kind of having that buddy system to say back, okay, life sucks, I'm only eating protein, I hate everything. But
I'll tell you the truth, I never went. I had the one day of lethargic feeling, but I ate really well. I mean, I was eating seafood. I was eating a lot of fish. I had a zucchini pasta shrimp scampi, massive amounts of protein and no fats, no carbs. I mean, I didn't want for any food, so I wasn't miserable on the diet itself. But my body definitely felt no fuel. That's for sure.
And that was it. For you, things are a little bit different because, you do have a level of fat adaptation to you because of what you do and the way that you train.
Right.
But most people that don't come from an already low carbohydrate world will hit a little bit of a wall as their body has to then upregulate, fat as its main fuel versus carbohydrates, which is a very simple process because in short, you drop your carbohydrates down under 30, drop your fats down under 30 grams, and then you raise your protein up to about 1.5 grams to 2 grams per lean pound of body mass.
Right.
So there's situations, and just to give you the background, the reason we know, you need protein, but you also can't do without energy. I think it's called rabbit starvation, and there was a group of travelers, explorers, whatever, and they were stranded in an area, and all they had to do was eat rabbits. Rabbits is a very lean meat.
Yeah.
And after a period of time, from only eating protein, having zero fat to eat, they used up all their body fat and they died. So there's a point that you can get to that you can become, 1% body fat and be, at least they died looking very pretty, but they definitely, you need energy source to live. And it shows. Like I told you, your workouts will have to dial down. For me, it was day 1 was fine. Day 2, I had a little bit of a boost. Day 3 was leg day, and it was like it took me some work to get through there. I went on, a clean 4th day, and then my 5th day was a little bit extra fat, but was still, kind of borderline, a modified version of it.
Right.
And then I came out of it on day 6, and I dropped 2% body fat. I use a product called Sculpt, SKULPT, which is a body fat monitor that you put up to about 24 points on your skin, and it's the closest to a DEXA that I've ever seen. So I dropped 2 points, as well as I started at 224 and I dropped down into the 217 range. And I'm at 217 today, which is the great thing. always gain that weight back. As with regular fast, usually people fast and then they binge a whole lot afterwards. With this, it was, I went down and then I just kind of went back into the same cycle. Even had Super Bowl Sunday, had a little bit of life into living on Sunday and Monday, and then kind of back into it. I'm still at the same place, still feeling pretty lean and in good shape.
Now, metabolically, a fast like this changes how your body thinks. So, I know for me, and we talked about how I am. I actually, I didn't see. It's interesting. Over the course of the week, I went from about 147 to 137, 138. I dropped about 2.5% body fat, but I didn't see much of a change, and that was because I fast every day. So my body is used to working on the fuels that it kind of had anyway. I eat a moderate protein, high fat, low carb diet on a regular basis. So it didn't really sculpt my body. It didn't change the way my body looked. The only thing I noticed was on the day after, all of a sudden my abs showed up.
Yeah, and that was more of a hydration issue. So we definitely lost a lot of water in the process.
Yes,
that's one of the things that I noticed. I was the protein sucks a lot of electrolytes out of you when you're taking a lot, and also uses a lot of water in the process to just process that through. I noticed also the day after, water gets back into the muscle a little bit, and the muscles kind of bulk out just a bit, and of course that helps push them past that little bit of leftover fat. So I felt visually I was better looking the 24 hours after, not the moment right after. I felt like a little loose.
Same here. And actually, on my last 2 days, I did a water cut too. So I'd been drinking probably close to 2 gallons a day through the fast, and then on the last 2 days, I cut it down from 2 to 1 and 1 to 1/2. So I actually even reduced my water dramatically on the last 2 days just to see if that would help me cut down. But basically, a fast like this trains your body to go after your fat stores.
Yeah, and
and we lost Peter again. I'm sure he'll be right back. I guess he keeps knocking himself offline. So we'll see what he has to say about that when he comes back. Hang on 1 second. I think I have to hang up and call him again to get him back. So what Peter and I are going to... Yeah, I got to remember to lower that when that happens.
Yeah, and I got that. I got that fixed. Right. What was the question? Was training your body
it trains your body to go after your fat stores versus the fuel that you're giving it, burning the fat that you may not be able to get rid of.
And it takes a little bit more work. There's so many things going on in my world now where everybody is they can't suck down enough exogenous ketones, or there's these things that people are selling, because basically what happens is when you burn body fat, you produce a product called ketones, and your body produces them because they can pass the blood-brain barrier. They can actually get to your brain, fuel half your brain power without having to use sugar, which kind of steadies your mood out, gets everything normal. It also could be used for some of your major organs. That's like the body's last-ditch attempt to keep you alive. But we were made to use that more often than we were made to use our glycogen storage, which is the, oh shit, a lion's chasing me up a tree. I got to kick on the high octane fuel.
Right.
Our body likes to use the steady stuff. It's what we use when we sleep. It's what we use when we walk. It's what we use for all the basic energy needs. So when we produce those ketones, we use that mainly for those purposes, and we use fatty acids for the muscles and glycogen for the muscles. But now, because people pee on a pee stick that shows ketones, and they realize if I take exogenous ketones, or I take MCT oil, or I take coconut oil, I show more of them, so more equals better. So now people are taking in these things to create a false sense of ketosis and then brag about it all over Facebook. I can't tell you on Instagram how many times I see people holding up something that they just peed on and saying, look, it's purple, it's great, I'm awesome. For us, what we did...
They didn't create... They drank ketones. They didn't get their body to do it naturally.
Correct. And now with you doing it naturally and creating fuel from fat, that's great. And this is the process that we're hopefully one day I want to get you to dive in deeper, because most people that do this for an athletic benefit go 4 weeks, 6 weeks into this ketosis state. And then they realize that they just can't keep up. Their speed slows, they're tired, they feel like they got anchors on their legs, mostly because of electrolytes, but they never get past that stage. And it's not because your body hasn't learned how to make ketones, it's that your body hasn't learned how to use them and upregulate those. Hasn't learned how to upregulate the processes for fatty acids to get into the muscle to fuel them.
Now, will your body adapt at a certain point to be able to use that as fuel?
Yeah, and that's what fat adaptation is all about. It takes you a good 6 to 8 weeks. Whenever a new person comes into our group, we immediately post the same photo, which is embrace the suck. You're in that place now where you got 4 to 6 weeks where it's going to be awful. Your workout's going to suck. You got to dial them down. You got to dial down your heart rate, and you just got to go with it. And that's teaching your body how to become fat adapted. 6 to 8 weeks, you start to level off and get back to the same old gains. Once you're 8 to 12 weeks, then you start to increase performance again. But there's guys that in their third year, they get the full, put on the breather, hop on the treadmill, and do that full metabolic testing to see their respiratory quotients and all that stuff.
Right.
And there's guys that are like 60 years old that are in like their fifth year. And now testing from 3 years ago, they are showing that they're able to burn so much more fat. Where a carbohydrate runner probably burns about 0.5 gram of fat per minute to process, a fat adapted runner burns about 1.7 to 2 grams per minute as far as energy.
And is that just because the body is used to using far more fat as a fuel source instead of intake of carbs?
Well, it's
I want everybody who's watching this to understand the difference. So I talk every week about the difference of carbs versus fat and how the body uses them for fuel. So when you're looking at a long-term investment like this, where I'm going to invest into becoming fat adapted, how does the body morph into using that versus carb fuel?
And ultimately, what we want to try to do is get you metabolically flexible to use both, and that's what an athlete needs to learn how to do. You got to pretty much train for the race that you're doing and fuel for the races that you're doing. If you're going to be a 5K runner, you usually have enough glycogen on board to get through that 5K. You don't need a dose with anything. If you're a marathon runner, I've run marathons fasted with just electrolytes. There's no problem, but you're not going to race it. You're going to run it slow, and you're going to keep a good heart rate going. But your body prioritizes fuel, and up at the top has to take alcohol, it has to take sugar alcohols, it has to take exogenous ketones. Those are the ones that there's no storage mechanism, has to burn those guys right off. Next on the list, and actually scientists still argue about this, whether or not you're going to burn off some protein, which you carry about 150 to 200 calories of amino acids just flowing through your blood. And some scientists say you'll burn that off first. Some say you go right to carbohydrates next. And it's interesting how scientists are still arguing the processes of how that happens. One way or another, it's only 150 to 200 calories. It's not a big deal.
It's not an amount that is going to affect you drastically either way.
But it's also why our athletes only eat 2 or 3 times a day. They're not into the 6. If you're constantly flooding your system 6 times a day, it's antagonistic to what we do.
Right.
Then you get down to carbohydrates, and once you burn down the carbohydrates that you've eaten, your body tries to protect those glycogen stores. It'll burn them down a little bit. Now we can get on to fat. So you got all those things in the way. So we try to remove as much of that as we can, so that we just got to burn through the little bit of carbohydrates that we're eating from slow sources like spinach and avocado and broccoli and things like that. Maybe some berries we'll eat, and then we get right over to burning up fat, and mostly the fat that we train it to burn the fat that we're storing.
Now I want to ask a question. So we're talking a lot about the athletic world. What about someone who is, and you've been there, someone who's large, someone who is just starting a weight loss journey that's going to be considerable? Is this a diet plan that's conducive to them being successful, or is this going to be too much work for someone in that? I understand an athlete can be dedicated, an athlete has very driven goals, an athlete can be focused to understand things. Your average person who wants to lose a lot of weight, 100 pounds,
yeah, it's actually
going to be able to do something like this?
Yeah, I want to say it's simpler. An athlete trying to do this, the trouble that we have with them, it's like trying to fuel a race car while it's going around the track, because they never want to slow down, never want to bring down the volume. That volume is going to constantly make you need a little bit more calories and a little bit more eat back of some carbohydrates. And you're going to constantly be hungry, and you're going to be overfeeding when you're an athlete. When you're not an athlete, the guys that I have come in and the women, mostly women now that come into the program, we start them out with like, let's just take away exercise for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And it freaks them out because everybody thinks exercise means losing weight. And for me, that's the aspirin to the headache. We're masking something that could be wrong. We want to figure out what the headache is. And in the same respect, we want to figure out how the diet can work properly before we start layering in some exercise. Because if we don't get the diet right, your exercise is going to go up and down. And that means that your weight's going to go up and down when you stop, when you start, if you do intense stuff, if you back off. So let's get the diet right so that can lose weight. Then we'll layer in some exercise. And if we have to layer in a small additional amount of calories to compensate for that, which if you're fat adapted and you're in a fat adapted state, you don't need to, then it's fine. But at its simplest, a ketogenic diet is eat some sort of food with a face. Now, I only talk to meat eaters. You know, there are vegetarians that do this and have at it, but it's more difficult once you're already limiting your food. So to limit it down another level, you know, they have to figure that out. But it's eat a protein and have some fat attached to the protein. And along with that, eat something green. That's the simplest that you can get it. If you have a lot of extra fat on your body, try not to eat a lot of extra fat foods like nuts and cheese and dairy, and adding butter to everything, which is what, you know, there's a faction that's split off. There's the groups like myself, which are all rooted in the science of it. You know, we learn the biology of how the body processes it. And then there's the other side, which tells you eat all the fat that you want. You can't get fat from fat. But the guys that are teaching this are overweight. You know, so there's something that's wrong. And their people stall. And that's when they come to me. After they get stuck and they stall and they can't get their weight loss moving past a certain point, they come to me and we say, okay, so you want to learn how to really do this. Again, all the information is free. What would you say to
somebody who's a grazer? Like, I'm gonna lose weight by eating 8 times a day. Which can be effective if done correctly.
But you need that now for your blood sugar levels and to keep things stable. And you need it also probably out of convenience because, I mean, I see you're up with your daughter and then you're out over here and then there's gigs. So your windows are all over the place. I mean, we try to teach.
I've got a very small window because my window is only from noon, 1 p.m. till 9 p.m. That's it.
Then you need to stop that grazing.
No. I'm not a grazer. I'm asking for those like.
Oh, you're not?
No, I'm not a grazer at all.
Okay.
I fast from 9 p.m. until my first meal, which is when I get home from the gym, noon, 1 o'clock. I have my first meal is a big meal, 800 or 900 calories. My dinner meal at about 5:30 is a big meal of about 800 or 900 calories. And then I'll have one like a snack of a peanut butter and a banana. I may also have a protein bar. That's pretty much my intake on a daily basis.
You nailed. That's basically me. I eat 2 meals that are about the same size, and then I have a small snack someplace in between, and that's really all we're made to do. We're not made to be. So when you eat, your insulin rate raises, and when you're damaged, when you're overweight, your insulin responses are very blunted and damaged. So you raise up, and then instead of it coming straight back down, what happens is it lingers out there. And as long as insulin is present, this hormone called glucagon can't come out. That's basically the key that opens up the fat cell and says, fat, come out. We need you now for energy.
Right.
Because sugar and carbohydrates are ultimately toxic. Our body needs to focus 100% on using those or storing those, because if we have more than a teaspoon in our blood, we're dead. So that's why it's going to say, let me prioritize that. Let me forget about all the other fuel sources and lock those away. So when that insulin comes up and goes back down, for us that are now healed, like you can heal these things if you're not type 1 or if you're not, so far gone, then we go and we're using fat. Then we eat another meal. We're going to have a little bit of an insulin spike, and then we go again and we have another little insulin spike. So only 3 of those throughout the day gives us, maybe, 23 or 22 hours worth of time that our body can, use fat for fuel. Right. So that's what we want. We want it to be able to use fat for fuel. So if we're constantly grazing throughout the day, it doesn't mean that it won't happen. It makes it more difficult. But you can still, as long as you're eating at a deficit, you're going to be burning fat. Your body, if you're at a deficit, the body needs to use fat for energy. That's just plain and simple.
Right.
The way that we teach it makes it easier, because if insulin isn't present, it's not triggering all these hormones that, you have leptin and ghrelin, which are the 2 other hormones that are saying, feed me, I'm hungry, or I'm full, and they work in conjunction. So that's what we want. And by eating for me, the way that we explain it, eating hormonally smart, which means limiting down high glycemic sugars and those ones that have high impact, focusing on proteins because that's the one thing that you really need to repair your muscles and every cell in your body, and then limiting the fat, limiting the energy, the fat, to just what you need for the right amount of energy that forces you to still have to use some of your onboard fat.
Right.
That's the perfect combination. But that's the dance that takes people a little time to work with.
Right. Now,
most overweight people can get it like that. They just start eating some protein and stop the processed stuff, and they're losing a pound and a half every week consistently, like clockwork. And that's what it's all about. That's the most fat you could lose.
So I want to talk really quickly, because we only got a couple of minutes left, about the keto flu. So when you do something like this, inevitably your body is going to respond negatively at first. So let's quickly, we only got a couple of minutes. Let's kind of just touch on that and make people understand that that's only a small window.
Yeah. So and it's not a window that you have to go through. If you remember when I told you, hey John, I need you to go and buy this, and this, you're like, I got this multivitamin. I'm just going to eat a bunch of those. You then needed to go out and buy those electrolytes, right?
Yes, I did.
Everybody that goes through, the process of being low carb or anything, especially protein sparing modified fast, you need to maintain your electrolytes because it's a very diuretic way of eating. Your body just dumps out pounds of water weight that it's retaining, so it means it's not holding a lot of electrolytes. So you need to get your magnesium, the right types, the right dosage. You need to get your potassium, and you need to get sodium, or else you're going to start to really have a bad day. But
which is actually the things I bought. I bought magnesium, potassium, and pink sea salt, and I was using pink sea salt in my waters.
And Keto Flu is a choice. Everybody that talks about it in the groups, it's not something that has to happen. It's because you don't stay ahead of the electrolytes, and that's right from the start. You got to stay ahead of them, 100%.
Okay. So if you go into something like this, you can avoid the keto flu. If you're not careful, you're going to wind up in it. But typically, it's only a day or so, even if you do wind up in it.
Yeah. If you get it wrong, it's only for a day or so, and it's basically your electrolytes have to rebalance to the new system as it starts to use fat for fuel.
Okay. And this is always something that you should do supervised.
Yeah. We
in the beginning.
There's groups on Facebook that will teach you how to do it, and you can kind of, use the manuals that are out there. I have a coaching program where I'll take somebody start to finish through the process of it, make sure that they're all good. But, like anything, consult a doctor. Don't do anything stupid.
We say that every week. Consult a doctor. Make sure you're healthy enough to do what you're about to do.
Yeah,
all right, well, I want to thank you for taking the time out today to come on the show.
My pleasure.
Thanks for explaining this, because I had a lot of people asking me questions last week when I was doing it, and I explained it as best I could.
It's a pretty cool thing.
It is, and I definitely saw success. And the company that I use for my supplements, I sent them a picture of me 7 months ago and a picture of me last Friday, and said, "Here's what I just did, but your supplements have been there with me the whole way," and they were just like, "That's what we're talking about."
Nice.
I went from 175 pounds to, my top 4 abs sticking out the other day. And that's a pretty good feeling to be able to do. Again, we're talking about a protein sparing modified fast. The ups and downs of it. Please take this back and watch it again. Peter has a lot of information in here. Peter, what's your new website?
It's FAAT, Fat Adapted, FAATadapted.com.
So fatadapted.com with 2 A's. If you're looking to get into more of a fat-adapted lifestyle, an athletic lifestyle where you're burning fat instead of carbs, and you want to get into an incredibly fit lifestyle, stop by the Fat Adapted Athlete. Check it out. Peter I have found to be incredibly available and willing to talk to people about it. So, there you go. So I guess that's the end of this.
They always jump in at the wrong time. There we go.
Yep, and we lost you again there. All right, well, I'm going to end this anyway. We've lost Peter. Oh, no, he's back. Thanks for watching today.
Popular.
This is the Fit Show Wednesday Shorts Nutrition Series. We do this every Wednesday, 20 to 30 minutes. We try to bring you a different view on nutrition each week. Next week, we have Mike Dola from Stronger You, and we're going to talk Valentine's Day. And we're going to talk about how, like on most holidays, not to overdo it when you take your sweetheart out for a big meal. So make sure you stop by next week. Peter, thanks again for coming by.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure we're going to see Peter on the show again. Trust me on that. So
Cool.
I'll talk to you guys
Good deal.
later. Have a great week. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.